So we are going to start with the next chapter, that is exemption. Now this is an important chapter in GST as this chapter defines what services and what type of goods and services will be totally exempted from tax liability. Exemption indicates that for those goods and services which are mentioned in the list will not be subject to GST. And for this purpose, department has made specific provisions regarding exemptions under CGST and IGST Act. So CGST Act and IGST Act, only there is a difference in the section numbers, but most of the provisions will be same. Now, the first provision which talks about exemption is the exemption under section 11 subsection 1 of CGST Act or section 6 subsection 1 of IGST Act, which talks about three broad types of exemption. First one is general exemption, second one is an absolute exemption, and third one is a conditional exemption. So in this chapter we are going to discuss about all these types of exemptions one by one. Now, all these exemptions are based on the recommendation of the GST Council. So it is necessary that GST Council should recommend these exemptions, and then the SSE can avail those sort of exemptions. Next step is where by a special order, department is giving certain types of exemption, and that will include exemption by a special order. And third one is explanation where notifications are issued under IGST and CGST Act for granting certain types of exemptions. So let us see first what is the meaning of exempt supply. Now when we talk about exempt supply, the GST first defines what is supply. Because if a specific activity is considered as supply in GST, then the GST would be made applicable on those transactions. Now, exempt supply means supply of goods and services or both which attracts nil rate of tax or which is totally exempted under section 11 of the Act. Now, this will include broadly three types of goods and services. One is supply which attracts nil rate of tax. Secondly, supply which is totally exempted from tax. And third one is non-taxable supply. Now, the basic difference between nil rated and exempt supplies, for nil rated goods and services, it is considered as zero rated supply. And for zero rated supplies, input tax credit is available. But in case of exempt supplies, the ITC is also not available because the output is not liable for tax. So for input, the ITC won't be available. And third one is non-taxable supply. Obviously, those types of goods and services which are outside the GST ambit. So that will be considered to be non-taxable supplies. Now, first, let us understand what are the general exemptions. Now, these exemptions are provided as per the recommendation of the GST Council by way of a notification, and which exempts generally either absolute or subject to conditions which are necessarily to be fulfilled, both goods and services belonging to a specific description from chargeability of GST. So therefore, general exemption talks about certain category of goods and services where either full or partial exemption would be granted. So that is without any specific clauses or without any specific points, the exemption would be granted. Second is absolute and conditional exemption. Now, as far as absolute exemption is concerned, that exemption is considered to be without any condition. That means it will be straightforward. So once the GST is applicable or once the GST is not applicable. So for example, under reverse charge mechanism, that is under RCM, the service provider or goods supplier is not required to pay GST, and this is an absolute exemption. So for example, if a lawyer is providing services, then for lawyer, there is an absolute exemption. So he is not required to charge GST in any circumstances. But there are certain conditional exemptions also. Now, as far as conditional exemption is concerned, this is up to the registered person whether to avail or not to avail that specific benefit. So, conditional exemptions will be talking about how a person can take benefit for composition scheme. So, certain cases where uh, chargeability of tax or fulfillment of certain conditions has been directly taken away by the department. So it is up to assessee whether I want to take that specific exemption or not. So it is based on the conditions. So conditional exemption will be based on whether the assessee wants to avail that specific exemption or not. Then third type is where the exemption is given by way of a special order. Now, by special order meaning where the department specifically talk about the exemption for a specific time span or specific event. For example, in case of natural calamity, recently like Corona. So for certain states or for certain regions, they have given exemption for fulfillment of the certain conditions of GST, and for certain cases they have specifically exempted certain goods and services from uh, chargeability of GST. But that is obviously that has to be implemented by a special order and only for a specific period. So another example is where the earthquake or any other natural calamity or tsunami or any other situation occurs at that point of time. By way of special exemption, the department can grant non-chargeability of GST for certain goods and services. Now, government is empowered to clarify the scope and applicability of the notification or the special order by inserting an explanation in such notification or order. Such clarification shall only be issued by way of a notification within a period of 1 year of issuing the notification or the special order. Every such explanation shall have the effect as if it had always been a part of first such notification or order, as the case may be. That means when the department gives a clarification or insert a special notification within 1 year, it will be considered to be a part and parcel of the original notification. Now, to put it in simple words, the exemptions are broadly bifurcated into two. One is general exemption. General is sub-bifurcated into two, absolute and conditional. So, absolute exemption is without any condition, and conditional exemption is obviously subject to certain criteria. And second one is exemption by special order. So, here the department will specify a specific order according to which the exemption would be given. After understanding different types of exemptions, now we have to understand which types of goods are not liable for taxes and which type of services are not liable for taxes. So department has come up with a clarification by way of a notification for the list of exempted goods, and this notification is issued in 2017 specifying the list of goods which are not liable for taxes. So let us understand those exemptions one by one. First one is live animals other than live horses. Now horses are excluded specifically because usually the horse breed is used for the purpose of horse races, and department doesn't want to promote horse races, and therefore they have said except live horses, other live animals will be exempted from GST. Then meat and edible meat offal, so that will be exempted from taxes. Then fish, crustaceans, that is, it will include crabs, lobsters, crayfish, and similar kind of elements. And then molluscus and other aquatic invertebrates. So that means the animals which do not have the backbone or bony skeleton. So all those animals will be considered as exempted product or goods. Then dairy product, birds, eggs, natural honey, edible products of animal origin not elsewhere specified. Now you have to remember here that all these products are unprocessed products. So if you talk about birds, eggs, so that is exempt. But if you prepare an omelette, like if you process it, so that will be considered to be taxable. Or natural honey, if the honey is sold in its original form, then it is non-taxable. But if honey is processed honey, then it will be considered to be a taxable product. Hmm. Next is human hair, unworked, whether or not washed or scored. Waste of human hair, semen, including frozen semen, so that is used in case of certain uh, uh, medicinal requirements. So accordingly, those will be considered to be exempted from taxes. And human hair are used for the hair transplantation and other purposes. So that will be considered to be tax free. Then live trees and other plants, bulbs, roots, and the like, cut flowers and ornamental foliage. Now, ornamental foliage is shrubs which is grown in the garden and for handsome and richly variated foliage. So obviously that would be sold as a decoration shrubs, or that will be used in the garden. For gardening, these kind of foliages are used. So these are also considered to be exempted from taxes. But here it should be natural. When we talk about natural foliage, that means if you are having a plastic made, or you can say it is artificial foliage, then they have not specifically excluded that here. Here it includes only ornamental foliage. Then edible vegetables, roots, tubers. This will include potatoes, fresh or chilled. Now remember, potato is exempted, but potato chips are taxable. Similarly, tomato, fresh or chilled, again it is exempt, but tomato soup, or you can say tomato ketchup, will be a taxable product. Then onion, shallots, garlic leeks, and other oleaceous vegetables, fresh or chilled, so that will be exempt from taxes. Cabbages, cauliflower, kohlrabi, it is like a low scout cultivator of the wild cabbage. Kale and similar edible brassicas, fresh or chilled. So all will be exempted from taxes. Then you have edible fruit and nuts, peels of circuit fruits or melons, coconut fresh or dried, whether or not shelled or peeled bananas, including plantains. Plantains belongs to the banana family fruits. Fresh or dried dates, figs, pineapple, avocados, guavas, mangoes, and mango tins are fresh. So all these will be considered to be exempted from taxes. Then coffee beans not roasted, unprocessed green leaves of tree. So remember that if we talk about coffee powder or tea powder, that is not considered as exempted from taxes. Here we're talking about coffee beans, which is unprocessed, and unprocessed green leaves of the tea. Then cereals, all goods other than those put up other than those which are put up in unit container and bearing a registered brand name. So if you are having a brand named product which is being sold, so obviously it will be taxable. Fresh ginger other than in the processed form. Products of milling industry, malt, starches, insulin, wheat gluten. So wheat gluten will be used for the purpose of it's like a protein diet, so that will be exempted from taxes. Then oil seeds and oleaginous fruits. So that means the plant food which from which we can extract oil. Miscellaneous grain, seeds, fruits, industrial or medicinal plants, straw and fodder. Now, as far as straw and fodder is concerned, it is जिसको हम लोग घास बोलते हैं, which is used either as a shelter, मतलब roof बनाने के लिए, or many times it is used for breeding the animals like गाय भैंस को चरने के लिए जो हम लोग use करेंगे, so that will be considered as straw and fodder. Then lac, gums, raisins, and other vegetable saps and extracts of lac and shellac. Hmm. So you might have heard about the lac from which various ornaments are prepared. So all these will be considered as which are extracts of the tree, if you are aware. So these will be exempted from taxes. Then vegetable planting material, uh, Vegetable plating materials, vegetable products not elsewhere specified or included betel leaves, sugar and sugar confectionery, cane jaggery. So that all will be exempted from taxes. Now, if you observe all these cases, it is directly an agricultural product or unprocessed product. Then preparations of cereals, flour, starch, or milk, pastry cooked products. So all pastry cooked products, puffed rice, commonly known as muri, then flattened or beaten rice, which is known as chira. So parched rice, which is known as koi. Parched paddy or rice coated with a sugar or gur is commonly known as murki. So all these will be specifically exempted from taxes. Earlier, rice was coming under taxable category, but then subsequently GST covered that under the exemption list. Then you have miscellaneous edible preparations like prasadam, which is given in religious places like temples, mosques, church, gurudwaras, dargahs, etc. So basically, it is given. Sometimes it is given in the form of uh, uh, like a lunch, and sometimes it is given in very small quantum. So whether it is given in the form of a lunch or a dinner or full meal, or it is given in the form of a very small quantity, both will be considered as exempted from taxes. Obviously it should be supplied without being charged for that. So donation is different and charging is different. So if it is working on the principle of a hotel, like they are charging per plate certain things, so then it is not specifically exempted from taxes. Then beverages, spirit and vinegar, water. So this will be considered to be exempted from taxes, but here it will not include aerated, mineral, purified, then distilled, medicinal, ionic, battery or demineralized, and water sold in the sealed container. So except this, all will be considered to be exempt from taxes. Residues from the waste from the food industries prepared animal fodder. So many times the food industry's remaining product or waste from the food industry is processed in the form is processed and is converted into such kind of no, you can say product which can be used as an animal fodder. Then salt, sulfur, earths and stones, plastering material, lime and cement. Next is pharmaceutical products, human blood and its components. So this all will be considered to be exempted from taxes. So hemoglobin or platelet will also be considered as non-taxable. Then this is an important aspect, organic manure other than put up in unit container and bearing a brand name. So if we talk about uh, non-organic manure, or you can say uh, chemically processed manure, so that will be considered to be a taxable product, but organic manure would be exempted from taxes. Then essential oils and resinoids, perfumery, cosmetics or toilet preparations, which include kumkum, bindi, sindoor, alta. Alta is like a red dye which is applied for hands and legs. So like when the a new bride comes house, so she is supposed to put her hand or foot marks in her house with a red uh, uh, dye. So that is alta. So this will be considered as exempted from taxes. Then miscellaneous chemical products, municipal waste, sewage, sludge, clinical waste. So all these are exempted from taxes. Now remember, this is important. Plastics and articles thereof of plastic bangles. So that is exempted from taxes. Rubber and articles thereof condoms and contraceptives. So this will be totally exempted from tax liability. Then wood and articles of wood, wood charcoal, firewood, or fuel wood. So all these would be tax free. Then paper, paperboard, articles of paper pulp, so all will be exempted from taxes. But remember, printed books, newspapers, pictures, and other products of the printing industry, manuscripts, typescripts, and plans. So these all will be exempted from taxes. But remember, if you talk about a notebook, so notebooks sold will be taxable. Like if you see when you purchase, when you go in shop, stationery shop and purchase these kind of product, that will be mentioned including GST. So for these products, the GST is applicable. Raw silk, wool, fine or coarse animal hair, horse hair yarn, and woven fabric. So this comes under the exempted category. Cotton will include Gandhi topi, khadi yarn, so that is exempted from taxes. Other vegetable textile fibers, paper yarn, woven fabrics of paper yarns, coconut or coir fiber, jute fibers, raw or processed but not spun. So all these will be considered as exempted from tax liability. Other made-up textile articles, sets, worn clothing, and worn textile articles tax Indian national flag. So obviously it should not be liable for taxes. Then ceramic products. Now for protecting ceramic industry, they have kept ceramic products outside the GST net. Then glass and glassware, bangles, except those which are made up from precious metals. So if precious metal is attached to the bangles, like suppose gold plated uh, glass bangles are taxable, because ultimately it is a gold plating is given, so it becomes a precious metal, so it will become taxable. But only glass or plastic bangles are exempted from tax liability. Then tools, implements, cutlery, spoons, and forks of base metal or parts thereof of the base metal, like agricultural implements manually operated or animal driven. So that will be non-liable for taxes. Then you have nuclear reactors, boilers, machinery, and mechanical appliances and all parts thereof. So handloom, basically they want to protect the handloom industry, which is used for weaving clothing. So all these will be totally exempted from taxes. Then aircraft, which includes spacecraft and different parts thereof. So that will be outside the GST ambit. Then optical or photographic or cinematographic measuring, checking, precision, medical or surgical instruments and apparatus, parts and accessories thereof. Then you have musical instruments, parts and accessories of such articles. Then indigenous handmade musical instruments. Now remember, if it is indigenous handmade musical instruments, it is taxable. It is non-taxable. But if you are using electronic guitar or other musical instruments which are not handmade, so these will be liable for taxes. Then miscellaneous manufactured articles, which will include slate, pencils, and chopsticks and slate, so exempted from taxes. Lastly, you have project imports, lab chemicals, passengers baggage, personal importation, ship stores, passenger baggage. So all this will be completely exempted from taxes. Now, when we'll study FTP, so there is a specific concept called project imports. So project imports are imports which are essential for carrying out certain important or key turnkey projects. So for that purpose, if you are getting something into India, so it will become non-taxable. So that's it. That is the list of all exempted goods. So if you deal with any of the product which falls under this category, then it will be considered to be a exempted product, and therefore GST is not applicable on all these transactions. Okay. Now we'll discuss about a practical question on this so that you can have a grip of what is taxable and what is not taxable. So if you check question number 1, here they have given the information about Mr. Param. who is a registered dealer, and he's into various businesses. Now, practically, it won't happen that the same person will be doing so variety of businesses, but they want to cover different types of transactions which are taxable and which are non-taxable. Hmm. So, first transaction, sale of plastic bangles. You have to decide whether it is taxable or not, and if it is taxable, then GST liability. So obviously, first transaction is not liable for tax because plastic bangles and glass bangles comes under the list of exempted uh, goods. Hmm. Then you have supply of mobile phones for 3,20,120. Now, since this is a product or goods which has been sold or distributed, so it is liable for taxes. Secondly, it is not covered under the list of exemptions. So he will have to pay tax on 3,20,120 at the rate of 2.5%. So 8003 of CGST and 8003 of SGST. Then you have sale of printed books and newspapers. So that is exempted from taxes. Sale of debts, sale of salt, again that is exempted from taxes. Then you have sale of organic manure worth rupees 2 lakh. Now you know organic manure is exempted from taxes, but uh, as far as chemical fertilizers are concerned, these become taxable and liable for taxes. So here you have sale of chemical fertilizers 575, out of which 30%, out of which 30% subsidies received from Government of India. So 5,75,000 less 30%. So you have 4,02,500 as taxable supply, on which again you will apply CGST, SGST of at the rate of 2.5%. So 4,02,500 into 11%. Sorry, 5,75,000 into 70%. So that is 4,02,500 into 2.5%. So that is 10,063 of CGST and 10,063 of SGST. So here the total supply will be 7,22,620 and total of 18,066 worth rupees of CGST and 18,066 worth of CGST and SGST should be charged to this person. So that is how we have to consider that which goods are taxable and which goods are non-taxable. Accordingly, we will do the calculation for exempted supplies. So whatever is exempted supply, will consider it as non-taxable, zero amount of GST on that. But for other supply, we have to consider how much is taxable and how much is exempt from taxes. And after excluding the exemptions, we can directly calculate how much is taxable uh, goods and what is the GST liability in that case. Okay, so after this we'll study what is exempted services.